Välkomna till ytterligare ett webbinarie här i ELSA-projektets serie för lite ökad kompetens här. Jag heter Staffan Lund och arbetar på Västra Götalands regionen, och idag så ska vi lära oss lite mer om Chalmers modellering av ett framtida energisystem i Västra Götaland. Chalmers kommer att börja här nu på morgonen genom Pandu Prianto som arbetar med den här modelleringen, och även Lisa Göransson kommer att presentera sitt arbete här. Sen har vi ju i vanlig ordning en tid för en frågestund. Sen vill jag säga något kort om regionen och länsstyrelsens arbete med Rådet för industrins omställning i Västra Götaland, som har tagit del av den här modelleringen och slutsatser från den. Det är alltid intressant att se hur den här typen av forskning och arbete kommer till del i vår praktiska vardag. Det här är bilder som ni kanske, flera av er känner igen, som ni har sett tidigare. Ni har varit med på den typen av webbinarier eller engagerat i ELSA. Men ELSA är ju ett projekt för energiplanering över kommungränser i Västra Götaland. En viktig del av det här arbetet är ju att vi gemensamt höjer varandras kompetens kring energifrågor. Och ELSA-projektet består ju av länets 4 kommunalförbund, VGR, Länsstyrelsen och Energikontor Väst, och det finansieras av Energimyndigheten. Men med det sagt så lämnar jag över till Pandu att börja dela utifrån Chalmers och berätta om ert arbete med modellera ett energisystem för Västra Götaland.
So good morning, everybody. We will switch to English. So the ones behind this work is then, of course, Pandu, who's done the majority of the work, and he's a PhD student here at Chalmers. And then the supervisors of your work has been me and Professor Philip Jonsson. So we work together here at Chalmers Energy Technology in a research group looking at the transition of the energy system, and we're working with this transition both on European scale and Swedish scale, and also then regional scale. And part of our work is, a lot of the work is done with techno-economic modeling. So it's this work that we will present. That means that we focus on properties, technical properties and economic properties, to investigate how those driving forces can form the future's energy systems.
Yeah, so I'm also here, Philip Johnson.
Then I will start. Hello, everyone. I'm Pandu, and so the presentation will be formulated as below. So we will start with the background and motivation for the study, and then we present the methods that we did and the results from the work, and also some takeaways from the study that we have done. As we all know, that the region will expect plenty of increased demand in the future, especially from electrifications, which is the industry and transportation will have in the future. And then there has been some questions and concerns, or even uncertainties regarding which technologies that should be there to meet the demand in the future. And then what are the technologies that should be there to achieve the cost-effective system, in a sense. And we also need to acknowledge that the regional and municipalities have a strategic role in achieving these targets, and it's always good to work together hand in hand. So we developed the model about regional energy systems to answer the following questions. And how can the regional meet the future demand for electricity and hydrogen? And then what kind of technologies or investment should be there to achieve the cost-effective system? And then we also try to investigate whether the region still relies heavily on import, as we have seen in the past or in the recent years, and how many imports are considered to be cost-effective. So this is the method that we have developed. So we developed a techno-economic model for the energy systems for the regional So we name it resist for now. And the objective of the model is to optimize investment and operation of the system. So in the model, we have a demand in the future, which consists of electricity, heating, hydrogen, and transport. And then we try to find out how many local generation that we need and how many import that we need also to meet the future demand. And we include storage technologies in the model as well, such as batteries and for in the electricity part, and then seasonal thermal storage, and then caverns in hydrogen demands and tanks as well for both of these. And the output of the model will be the investment of each technologies in each part of the regional, and then operation in every time step, and then total system costs. So these are the model that we have worked with. It's a techno-economic model, so we need to remind you that it's a purely cost-driven, so and techno-economic one. So it's in a way very specific on the driving force for the model as well. And then, so currently we model only 1 year in the future, which is 2050. We take future demand based on the actual report that we have seen in the figure before, which almost reached like almost 60 terawatt-hour in a year. And then in the model, we also have electricity price in the region, which consists of SE3, Nordic and Danish electricity price, which amount to about 50 euro per megawatt hour as an average hourly yearly price. And then for the cost of the technologies, we use the ones from Danish Energy Agency catalog, which is quite well known as the one of the better ones in providing the cost for technology in the future. And we have done 2 study cases, which is this case we refer to as DIR limb and V2G limb. So the DIR limb case, we assume that the region will still have the current import capacity from TSO or from Svenska kraftnät. And then in this case, we do not allow V2G to participate in the system. And then for the next one, we try to increase, or we assume the increase of import to the region. And then we allow V2G to be participate in the system to charge and discharge to provide storage services in the system. But we limit it to only 20% of number of vehicles that are to be in the region in the future. And then for the infrastructure, we choose electricity since it is supposed to be the main infrastructure in the future to transmit electricity. And then we use current topology for the network. And then regarding this, we limit every import to every parts of the region to be 400 MVA. And I will show you the picture in the following slide. So this is the topology or the model that we have. So we took this from the OpenStreetMap, which is an open source. This tool collect information from satellite imagery. So we choose 130 kV network, which is owned by one of the DSOs in Västra Götalands, and it depicts the regional electricity network in a sense. So we can see in here in Göteborg, we have plenty of connections, and then in here in this case, Trollhättan, and then Stenungsund, Lysekil, and Mariestad, which will be the expected high increase of industrial demand in the future. And then, so the black dots indicate electricity substation. So maybe if you have driven through some parts and then you can see power lines and maybe substation, this may be one of those substations that you have seen in the road. And then we use these cells, so to say, to obtain how many potential of renewables for solar and wind, and then which we assume to be connected to this, for example, these nearby nodes. So each cell covers the demand and the generation for this specific part of the region. So it's quite different because there are some municipalities that do not have this substation in a sense. So we aggregate those municipalities to the nearest one geographically. And then we use this tool developed by also Chalmers researcher which takes the potential while previously removing the bad land types, for example, nature reservations, and then forests or protected forest, and lots of population. And then it is different between the wind and solar potential. So the land types are removed, that are being removed are different. And we assume this power density for wind and onshore wind and also solar PV in a sense. So moving on with the potential for the wind onshore and also offshore. So we have three types in the model, which is onshore wind, and then near or fixed type offshore wind, and then long and or floating type offshore wind. So this is for the onshore wind. So we exclude these bad land types and also some military zones. And then for the near offshore type, we assume some parts of the shallow shore in a sense. And then, for example, in here we see some potential in Västra as well, so include that. And then for the far offshore wind, we took this potential from Finnbruksskolan, which is a tool from Länsstyrelsen, and I think, and we also took these numbers from RISE report, which has been published a few years ago. So these are the projects or upcoming projects that we assume can be there in the future. Vidar, we assume to be connected or possible to connect to Tanum, and then Gamma to Lysekil, and then Mareld and Poseidon to Stenungsund. And then West Wind, we assume it to be near offshore, which can be connected to Göteborg, to Hisingen or Torslanda, to be exact. And then these are the capacity that we have in total after we apply the tools that we had. And then for the solar, we have two types, which is ground type and also rooftop. And these are the potential that we had. And then we also remove some parts of the land as well. But we can see it's quite different from what we had before for the wind potential. So this is the method that we use for the model, and we can start with the results now. So first will be the yearly production for the region. So the region will try to produce almost 60 terawatt in the future, and we can see the distribution for each technologies. So we can see this green part means this is the onshore wind, the darkest one, followed by this will be the floating offshore wind. So these two will be the, you can say that the most, the technology that provides the most of the generation in the future. And then followed by onshore wind, offshore wind, which is nearby shore, and then PV. So this is the rooftop PV, and this one is the ground PV. And we can see this brown chunk is the import from TSO. And we can see that the region has been, from the results, we can see that the region, it is found to be cost effective for the region to be produced locally and rely less on import. For example, in here, we can see the comparison will be around 7 to 8% on this Dirlim case, which is the without V2G and low import case. Even with high import case, the reliance on import doesn't really increase that much, for example, in the future. So we can see it increases from 7% to 11%. So which is, we would say it will be lower compared to today's condition, where it is almost 70% that the region rely on import.
Maybe to remind, what was the difference between the high and low import case?
Yeah.
Maybe.
So for the import case, we use today's condition, which is, I guess, the term is regional abomenang. And then here it is around 3,200 megawatt per hour, which is about 28 terawatt hour in a year. For this one, it is about 5,600 megawatt, which will translate to 49 terawatt hour in a year. But then it's only used like 6.5 terawatt hour in this case, based on the model results. So still, it is cost effective to be produced locally, which is mostly consists of renewable energy in a sense. And here we include hydro, although historically hydro has been quite few, which only amount to 2 terawatt-hour per year. But still, it is an important source of electricity as well. And here we can see at the bottom, it is consists of CHP and CCGT in this case. And yeah, we will come to gas turbines later on. And then, so this is the distribution of the regional import points. So even though we presented earlier that the regional is still like net importing, but actually it's still importing to up to 18 terawatt-hour per year. But it's also, the model also allows export to the TSO as well. So, and then we can see that in some sense, the region helps TSO up to 12 terawatt-hour to help the national grid in a sense. And we can see in some parts of the region where the net importer nodes are Göteborg and then Trollhättan, since it can supply to both Stenungsund, Lysekil, and also this part in Hofde and Skara, where it can connect to Mariestad through this part. So, but then some parts, for example, in here in Dalsed and Svenljunga, it shows that this part tends to be more next exporter in a sense, since it could be that the demand is much lower, and then the model say it is cost effective for them to supply the grid and then get something or benefits in return, so to say. And then, yeah, we move on. So this will be the, the mean electricity value that we had from the model. So even though the price will be the same for all the nodes, we can see the distribution of electricity value in these parts of the region as well. So we can see for the net importer nodes that we have seen before, the price is much higher compared to the ones in the net exporter nodes. And then I guess we can see that in here it is up to 85 euro per megawatt hour. And then we can see Mariestad, Göteborg, and Stenungsund has the highest value of electricity based on the model results. And then this part will be much cheaper to produce electricity in here. So this also correlates with the import node that we had seen before, that the nearby demand centers, this is much more valuable for electricity to be there. And then you can see in here on the bottom part is the power lines utilization for throughout the year. We can see that the demand centers nearby Stenungsund and Lysekil has the most utilized power lines throughout the year. So it's almost, one can see it as some kind of, does this indicate congestions? We don't really say that, but it's most like that this line will be much more under heavy stress. But that does not mean that this line is always congested. So that's one thing that we want to say in this figure as well. But still, you can see that the Stenungsund holds like a very high demand and also very high power utilization as well. And then here comes the wind distribution for the region. So we can see before that the wind onshore produced the most for the yearly electricity production. And we can see on the top figure is the distribution in megawatt. So for example, in Dalsed and then Ulricehamn and Bullerby and Gullspång, I think this part, this has the most or the highest deployment of onshore wind. But then we can see at the bottom is how many land that this part is actually using. So we can say the most will be this part in Tibro, which will be almost 20%. And we find it also interesting that Aarhus holds quite high potential for onshore wind as well. But it's also something that we need to understand that Aarhus has a direct connection to Stenungsund, which explains that this part holds like a important role to produce Stenungsund. Pardon. And then here we can see in those even though it has like a high deployment in here, this is much lower because it has like a quite wide area in a way. And we can see in both of the scenarios, there hasn't been much difference in terms of a deployment. This is because the model finds this onshore wind to be the most cost-effective way to produce electricity. So this technology has been very favorable in terms of costs and technical properties. As for the solar PV, it shows quite different results that we can see with the introduction of V2G as a storage options for electricity and also higher imports. We can see more investments in the region, prominently in this bar part, where it is much more higher compared to this in the other cases where we don't allow V2G. So we can see that V2G and or batteries, in a sense, in the cars plays like a quite complementing role with the solar, as we can see here. And then we can also see that in the previous part in the onshore wind, that here we don't really find that many investment for wind, but then here we can see much more in this part. So we can also say that solar PV complements wind production in a sense. So in the parts where onshore wind is not possible to be added more, then the model will try to see that the solar PV will be something that comes as a second option in a sense. And we can see here the land use is much more smaller or much more less compared to onshore wind, which is only almost 2%. But this also driven by the fact that the power density that we assume is much more higher for solar PV compared to wind. Then moving on to the offshore wind. So we can see on the top part will be the far offshore wind, which is Gamma and Maralt and Poseidon, which we see that it has been invested, although not to the full capacity of the expected project, so to say. So for example, Gamma, the model shows to be invested about 800 megawatt out of 2.5 gigawatt. And for Maralt, it's about 2 gigawatt out of 3.5 gigawatt, which we connected directly to Standing Soon, and for Gamma connected to Lisa Shield. And at the bottom part, we can see the near offshore wind, and then we can see West Wind. It is invested to the full capacity. So we can see how West Wind can provide electricity to Göteborg. And then Orus, about 165 megawatt for the near offshore wind. And then Lisa Shield holds about 420 megawatt. And then we can see that both of Gamma and here in Lisa Shield is connected to some extent. So the model sees this as the most cheapest option, but then it moves on to this one as this capacity has been fulfilled entirely. And then in this case, we can see as well in Maris that since we allow potentials in Vänern, in this part, the models sees it to be beneficial to connect this offshore wind connected to Mariestad, as we expect a high battery factory will be here. And then we can also see that this offshore wind or the far offshore wind will tend to be connected to places with very high demand, which is Standing Soon and Lisa Shield, but also quite strong connection to the grid, which is Standing Soon in this case, since it be connected to Trollhättan and also Göteborg in this part, and nearby import nodes as well. And then we can see also in the for P2G in here, so we have two storage options in the model for electricity part, which is batteries in the top part and also V2G at the bottom. So V2G, we see it as only reflecting the number of cars in each of these cells. So the model does not really see it as like a costly investment. So it is there already. So whether it's just whether we allow it to be connected to the grid or not. But for example, in batteries, it is like you need to invest in this part. So we can see the batteries are connected or it will be invested and cost effective in places with very high generations. For example, in Orus, we can see at one that it contains high of generation in onshore wind and also offshore wind that we have seen before. But it's also connected close to the Standing Soon, which is a high demand center.
So that's stationary batteries.
Yes, so yeah. I forgot to mention that it's a stationary battery, so the grid scale battery in a sense. And then we can see also in the Boros that it has like a very high investment of batteries in this case. And then we can see that it is connected to import nodes. So we can see that this battery or high investment of grid scale battery can play a role to move imports in over time. So we, as before, we have seen that there is an import node in Sven-Ljunga, and then it has an interplay with the batteries investment in here. And then we can see with the introduction of V2G, most of the batteries will be replaced as a role. So we can see these technologies have in a way competing roles. But then we can see that Oru still maintains its high investment for batteries, which shows that V2G it's either not available here, and then batteries has to take care of that part. Because in here there is a very small investment or very small car numbers that is able to participate in the V2G in this figure. And then we can also see that as before, that most of the places in here relates with the placement of onshore and also solar PV. So we can also say that the batteries and V2G it simplifies the deployment of renewables in a way. And as for the gas turbines, so in the model we assume or we allow two types of gas turbine, which is OCGT, open closed gas turbine, and CCGT, closed cycle gas turbine. So these two are different in the sense that they have like a different technical properties, and one can say that OCGT tends to be operated in peak periods rather than CCGT. And we can see that in the top will be the OCGT parts, and then it is very small investments. So it's only like 7 or 8 megawatt, which is only in the very far edges of the region as well. So the model says it to be cost effective to be placed these technologies as some kind of emergency or backup options where the wind production or solar production does not have enough to cover these parts of the region as well. And if you remember previously that regarding the marginal electricity value, this part is where the higher marginal value is found as well. And then, for example, in Mariestad in here, we see this investment more coming up. But then for CCGT, we can see that most of the industrial areas still need this technology in the future. For example, in Stenungsund and Lysekil, it invests to up to 200 or 250 megawatt and the low import scenarios. But then in high import scenarios, it can be reduced further since there is a nearby import node from Trollhättan, which connects to Lysekil and also Stenungsund. So with more higher import, we can see like a reduced reliance on CCGT as well. So we can see that OCGT is found also in these places with the lack of local generation in terms of wind and solar, and also weaker connection to the grid. For example, in this part, the very edge in Almar, and this is in Tanum. And then, yeah, so with that, we move on to the conclusion or takeaways. That so we have been developed the model, which is a techno-economic cost minimizing model. It's still under development, so we will like to have some feedback on this as well. And then we can see that the model finds it to be cost effective to fulfill most of the electricity production or demand in the future through local production. And then we can also see that wind and solar energy are found to be most cost effective to provide those local production. And then, yeah, it is also things that we see that import has been reduced due to the, the region has high potential of wind as well. So those can be really utilized to be able to provide self-sufficiency to the region as well, to becoming more reliant in a way. And then batteries we can found to be invested in production, generation nodes, which we can see before in Urus for a specific case, and then also nearby transmission nodes in the import case as well. And then as these technologies can move productions over time to also maintain the power delivery in those periods. So with that, I conclude the presentation. Thank you. And these are the references that we use for this presentation as well.
Stort tack för presentationen, och med det så börjar vi närma oss slutet. Jag ska lägga upp ytterligare en bild. Västra Götalandsregionen och Länsstyrelsen, vi har tillsammans hand om rådet för industrins omställning i Västra Götaland. Ett råd som består av, det leds av regionpolitik och av landshövdingen, och här sitter även ett antal av regionens industribolag som framförallt liksom har en stora behov vid en framtida omställning och industriutveckling. Men så finns även ett antal andra organisationer där vi har miljörörelser, vi har även kollega från Chalmers, och så har vi fackförbund och även näringslivsrepresentanter här som gemensamt diskuterar förutsättningar för omställningen. Och Lisa, du var ju och presenterade det här arbetet för dem i september. Väldigt stort intresse. Och till det mötet där så skrev vi på regionen egentligen en liten sammanfattning utav det här arbetet också. Så det finns en kort rapport som egentligen ger sammanfattning av ert arbete där också. Det finns att hämta på vår hemsida, och det var ett underlag till rådets representanter. För den som vill läsa en Readers Digest-variant av den här presentationen. Rådet tyckte det var väldigt bra underlag, och Industrirådet här, de arbetar så att de tar till sig ny fakta, gärna baserat från forskning från Chalmers eller energiforsk och liknande, och sen så försöker man ta något ställningstagande utifrån ett regionalt behov här. Här på bilden så ser ni rådets slutsatser och bedömning som man har gjort utifrån det här, och det är ju då viktigt att man ser att i regionen har vi förutsättningar att klara ett elbehov som tredubblas från dagens behov, och vi sitter själva och äger förutsättningarna för det utifrån slutsatser från den här modelleringen. Och att det också skulle vara kostnadseffektivt. Det är ju det som är viktigt för industrin, nämligen att priset på elen är relativt sett billig här jämfört med andra områden. Som sagt, det här presentationen finns ju inspelad och ta del av i efterhand, och man kan läsa den här rapporten med sammanfattande slutsatser av forskningen också parallellt om man vill. Och med det sagt så tackar vi för idag och säger att vi får fortsätta hålla kontakten, och tack så hemskt mycket för er medverkan, Filip, Pandu och Lisa, och alla ni som var med och lyssnade idag. Stort tack!